Hi, Jack. Let's see who shows up.
Yep.
So far, only us two. But you're early.
That was a load off. Jesus.
This is recorded, but yes, I mean it's not confidential or anything. But the yeah, that was a bit major. The
How do they just continuously record? How does that work?
I think I think it's the setup of the room. The room has auto record.
Ah,
Yeah, it's my room, and I allow auto record and people can join before the meeting starts.
I did not realize that. That's cool.
Yeah, and then I just delete all the stuff we say that we don't want, assuming y'all can trust me.
Yeah, I get it. The so,
Happy New Year on that note.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
yeah, same, absolutely Happy New Year. So do you do cloud recording or do you let it come down on your desktop?
For the auto start, you have to use the cloud.
Ah,
So normally I do local. I'm also getting something from the car real quick. I'll be at my desk. So, how is everyone doing? That's here so far.
well, it's cool for me, but I'll bet it's really cold for Marc Antoine.
It's been worse. Actually, we had New Year's Day above zero. Today is cold because it's only -6, but fairly serious with chill. Anyway,
Yeah.
this is par for the course. Um, but yeah, New Year's Day above zero, and Christmas was also above zero. It's like bloody nonsense.
Hmm.
Um, otherwise, we've been working on the call for proposal and sorry, a proposal. So that's kept us busy. So I've been suspend and I've had a lot of other things to do. So I my such as resumes and stuff. So my experiments with LinkML have been a bit delayed, but I'm going to get back to it fairly soon. Otherwise, what have I done that's interesting for the CDL from the CDL standpoint? I've been refining my idea of nested frames in various documents. I don't know if you saw there was a conversation Jack and I and Sunny had with the group called SenseMaking Senius. The video and transcript are up. I have it in my hyper knowledge posts. Really nice stuff. It was a great conversation about the global hyper knowledge project, and a few things are getting more precise as we uh, keep iterating the story. Uh, I'm a bit more active in the neobooks calls with Jerry because what Jose Leal is doing with his protocols feels very similar in some ways to one layer of the nested frames I'm talking about. So there's definitely uh, convergence there. So that's basically where I'm at. On your side, I'll give the link.
What a nice hat.
Oh,
You're,
wow. You're muted.
Yeah, it's my New Year's hat. Can't see the blinking lights very well.
oh, I can see them.
They're
Let's see that.
glowing.
They don't really blink.
There we go. There's a little bit of blink. So hopefully no one is gonna have a stroke for that.
Ah,
But yeah. I can give a kind of an update. I have been actually I had a lot of time over the holidays to work on a reason tracker um, trying to design the video that kind of explains how it works, because I still get a lot of confused people every time I try and explain it or demo it. So I think I have to work on a better explainer, which is unfortunate, but so it's far less intuitive than I thought. But playing with animation software and trying to decide, should I write it myself, use some JavaScript stuff, or use a pre-built actual animation software. So I'm playing with all those to see which would be quicker. Almost be quicker if I did it myself with JavaScript. Um,
Depends. What are you trying to animate?
Like one part of it is how Benjamin Franklin suggested to make complex decisions. So it's just, two pro and con lists and things crossing off and stuff like that, and things moving around the screen to kind of give people a visual feeling of how weights work and stuff. Um, yeah. So it's a standard kind of explainer video but you have to explain the overall concept. So it's more like, YouTube educational video sort of thing than demoing a product.
Right.
And I took the YouTuber Hank Green did kind of an epistemic exploration of his own concept of why he thinks legalizing gambling is more dangerous or worse than legalizing marijuana. It's like, why do I believe that? So he kind of went through, he did research online and did some surveys and stuff live. So he's kind of live. It's a video he did. It took about 20 minutes, edited down. So I was trying to put that in a reason score, and I realized, or reason tracker, and I was realizing that for the UI, it's hard to kind of see what's going on. So having it zoom around to the proper places would make the video a lot more useful. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so I've been playing with it. Every time you sit down, you want to rewrite your app. So I'm back to that point where it's like, I didn't expect I needed this. And that changes the the architecture a bit. So then I'm kind of like, well, is it worth re-architecting? I shouldn't, but that's the fun part.
Don't tell me about this. Yes, there's so many choices I'm flip-flopping on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that online that legalized gambling is really a regressive tax on poor people, what are his arguments?
It might be easier to kind of see the video. It doesn't, he was more exploring his own thoughts on that. And I think that's what he kind of said is I still kind of think legalizing marijuana isn't that bad. And one of the main points was that decriminalizing marijuana kind of reduces impact on over-policed populations, while decriminalizing um, uh, gambling kind of puts other groups of people at risk. So,
It
but
does.
outside of that, they were pretty uh, similar situations. So,
Well, I live, I guess, maybe 5 miles from a very major California Indian gambling Indian casino. And they would be really hard put to have somebody tell them they can't do that.
yeah. Although, yeah. So that is one aspect. Yeah, I'm a couple hours south of some Oklahoma gambling. We don't have any tech in Texas, but
Don't have
It's
any.
very hard to have good laws around the issues of addiction, right?
Mhm.
Especially when the addiction is promoted, legalized. I mean, the prohibition is a famous failure, and I think it did pave the way for saying, we can't ban addictive substances. And on the other hand, after prohibition was ended, what I understand is there were new ways to say, okay, not before that age, not before that age, and so on. I think the 21 feels old to me, but I know it did reduce actual accidents, which is interesting. Uh, I come from a Quebec family. I was given a bit of alcohol as a kid almost, right? It's tiny amounts, just a taste.
Yeah.
And I never was tempted to be drunk because it didn't have the forbidden fruit thing. Uh, I was always very reasonable around alcohol. And it's so for me that the prohibition would have been counterproductive probably because I've noticed people with less permissive culture around alcohol than the French are more they start later and then they're more tempted by binge drinking because it's a forbidden fruit. It's tempting. And I haven't
That
seen as much binge drinking in my culture.
that forbidden fruit thing applies also to sex.
Yes, of course.
You know, and my first exposure to the European mores was in a trip to Amsterdam and then through Germany, and they have these things called sex shops, and they've got dildos out in the window, and they've got women standing in windows, bordellos, and people just it's not a forbidden fruit. It's not a big deal. I
Yeah,
don't know whether their attitudes are more healthy than ours. I don't know that. But I just know that around here, this forbidden fruit thing, I grew up when some kid snuck a Playboy into our junior high school gym locker room, and we all got to look at these naked ladies and thought, wow.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, so I guess the next step for my project is to is to kind of keep exploring creating a video and see what I get to. I was just inspired to create a visual metaphor um for us watching a TED Talk, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I mean, I've been working on metaphors within the app, and so I'm using like flowing water and stuff, except at some point I need to cancel out two liquids, and that's not normally a thing. I mean, there are some chemical reactions, but that's not common, so the metaphor kind of breaks down. Um, but I think I'm going to do a metaphor about two teams competing on gathering minerals because it kind of has the effect of first like searching for something, and then as you get it, you also have to refine it. So not everything's going to be a high quality content. And so you're kind of boiling it down, and then it may
Interesting.
be some magical material that liquid that
Well,
when they
what
combine.
about heat? What about heat and cold? They do cancel one
Um,
another pretty well.
yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it does. That's a good mental analogy. It's not a really good visual one.
Uh, Hot water, cold water.
Yeah, which look the
There's
same.
not less water, but there's less of that intensity either way. So
Yeah.
if you go deviation from tepid,
Yeah. So like right now, let me share.
I mean, you could go for kind of magic, like four elements, fire, and water.
Yeah. Um,
But I think hot water and cold water really, it's
well, it's just the hot water and cold water look the same. So
yes.
you'd have to make one kind of glowing
No, but
red.
it's
I
it's
mean,
very conventional to have hot water be red and cold water be blue.
yeah, it's just then a tepid water would be a color in between as opposed to literal. So, in people's perception of gradation by color intensity for the human eye is not great. So right now it's kind of volume. As this increases,
Yeah,
increases over here and changes the volume in this. But this whole thing where I have uh well these two, this orange and this purple are canceled out. So right now I just have a brick wall. Um yeah, which isn't a great analogy. But that's also the analogy for the app, which is different from the analogy that I might use at the beginning of a video. Um so so that might be an interesting concept to try for the video.
the problem is if you have teams, it sounds like they're killing one another.
Yeah.
That's not
But I
great.
mean but that's literally kind of how the math works out, is that you subtract one from the other and what's left, the remainder is.
I mean, things that annihilate one another are not that frequent. You could go with matter antimatter, but I'm not sure
Hmm.
that's such a familiar metaphor.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. So, and then the other day I showed or I posted a image,
acid base, and then you get salt.
a base. Yeah.
Again, is that metaphor going to be that helpful? Who understands acid base well?
Yeah. And I think I
Uh,
need to reverse these. I can't, there was a reason why it was difficult, but to have the kind of the darker thing be on the bottom rather than the top. There's some reason why I had to have the canceling happen out at the bottom, but that may have been like a SVG drawing issue. It'd be better if it was at the bottom of the tube. Um, let's do,
intertubes.
yeah, show this one at partial power. And then the hardest visualization is um, where it increases the importance. It's kind of hard to see, but the importance happens, after, and I'm having trouble with my drag, after the confidence. And actually in a lot of other people's things there isn't importance, there's just negative relevance. But I find it's easier rather than, I guess I could have done negative relevance instead.
Are people
Um,
familiar enough with positive and negative current, the way they cancel? Continuous, that is.
yeah,
Direct current.
the thought.
Because that's pretty close to what's happening here.
Yeah, and actually current flows. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
And people would, like, if you say, negative current cancels negative current, everybody will, oh, yeah, yeah, right. That makes sense. And the notion that current has intensity, yeah, people kind of understand.
Those clearly look like rivers, and rivers have currents.
yeah,
Yeah, but the thing is, the canceling out, rivers don't cancel out.
yeah. That's the only kind of like problem.
The there's a spot in at the border of Thailand and Laos where there's these two rivers that mix, and one of them carries red mud and the other carries white mud. So you get these amazing eddies at the confluence.
Hmm.
It's a famous place, but yeah, you still get more water.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyways, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. But yeah, the Benjamin Franklin quote where he says, make two lists and find things that are kind of equal on either side and cancel them out. That's kind of like half the concept. Um, so I was going to use that and then build upon it.
I would
Um,
say I really still like hot and cold, even though it's a bit different because the see, positive, negative people have a connotation, and one is good, the other is bad. I mean, not for electricity, but the words positive, negative convey that on their own.
Yeah.
Armies, it looks like it's a war metaphor, and that's not good. You don't
Yeah.
want to encourage the war metaphor. Whereas heat and cold, they're there's a good middle. Otherwise, heat and cold are not intrinsically good and bad. Cold is good on a hot day. Heat is good on the cold day.
Mhm. Yep.
There's something very neutral about it.
So I was working on making the scoreboard a little better, although this is mostly just for because I was playing around with it and I wanted to. It wasn't like necessary. Um, but in, American baseball, there's a common scoreboard that uses the
Old
segment
Dell.
display and has rounded corners around painted in white around it. So I was
I
kind
mean,
of imitating
it
that.
reminds me of my first calculator when I was 12. I don't know. Is that familiar to most people?
Um,
Theo?
I mean, even if it's not familiar you still kind of know what it is. You know what I mean? It's still numbers in two different colors, so
Yeah.
it's just adding some extra familiarity for those in the same cultural context. But I
Fair.
don't know if it's worth having the corners or not. Um, I don't know. It's just plus I was playing around with it.
Fair enough. Sorry, I have no opinion here.
Yeah.
I find these hard to read. Like I remember,
These line segments. Yeah, I was thinking about I might, and that was really just because I was playing around. So switching it back to actual numbers is not a bad problem. The numbers I really like are the ones that are in theory a big spinning disc, right, with the numbers written on them, so you can see the numbers kind of roll up.
oh yeah,
I think that's good visual indicator of movement, rather than because the numbers always change. So there's the if everything else kind of the numbers flash. So I'd really like to change it to the rolling in, but there's some I don't know if I do that. If it goes like from 25 to 36, do I have it like go all the way to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then stop at 6, or just have it go from 5 to 6? I almost need it to go to have the single digit loop
the,
all the
the,
time so you get this visual feeling for how distant the two numbers are. You'll see it on
I
the
think the,
tens,
the
but
the visual thing will be more interesting on the thermometer thing, which again is a heat
Mhm.
metaphor.
Yeah, that's actually why I had to have this because the numbers you can't really see. I didn't have to, but when I'm doing the animations and the scores are going up and down, you just don't feel it unless you see something kind of like moving. And we could have done a dial or lots of different things, but this was the simplest one that works in any direction.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it is kind of a thermometer. It's a pretty common visual metaphor. Yeah. I don't know. So that's what I've been playing with.
Okay.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I guess this might just be us today.
Yeah, it looks like it. So I put the link to the CNES. I think this is more interesting than our update. Um, the I had little to say today, and visuals are interesting, but not we're not at fundamental content right now. So let's maybe adjourn.
Yeah. Yeah, one quick question, I guess, is I definitely want to incorporate probably a majority of what you're doing and either have reason tracker or like use it in my app
Mhm.
as a core data structure, and slash or make it to where the reason tracker math can apply to most anything in that data structure. I guess I assume you're still very loose on what the final structure is going to be. You're still experimenting.
I'm still experimenting, but it is getting closer in the sense that the final structure is going to be these nested frames. I think that's pretty close. The problem is what are the, not a problem, but the next aspect is what are the formal structures pointing to? And this whole duality between the immutable and immutable. But it's again, there will be an immutable version of everything, and there will be, oh, by the way, this immutable is part of this mutable stream of evolution of a concept with branches and branches at distinctions and otherwise evolution. So that remains true. There's still a bit of, I haven't implemented the final structure for that, but the basic metastructure is getting clearer and clearer. And I'm definitely, as I said, I stopped a bit in my LinkML experiments, but I do expect to get back to that and be able to say, well, this is what the data will look like.
Are there any other standards or libraries that you've, like LinkML, that you may have already think is going to be a core part of it, or?
Besides LinkML, though, I mean, LinkML draws to the whole ML ecosystem, the JSON LD and linked data ecosystem. So that remains true. What I'm not sure about is, do I want to adopt something like the transport protocol? I want to be agnostic, but my first implementation will be possibly an activity pub because there's a natural link between activity pub and linked data. That's easy. I don't have good activity pub libraries in Python, which is a bit annoying, but I mean, there's a few okay ones. So that'll do probably. Now everybody's getting excited about that protocol, which is fun. But another thing. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be presenting and consuming linked data. But the really interesting thing is how will the updates look like? I still think in terms of event sourcing, I still think there will be a subscription to standing queries. Nothing's fundamentally changed. The thing is more and more stable. I need to implement it all. That's it.
Okay.
The nested aspect, I'm still looking at details. That's going to be key. I was very much trying to make it into a recursive hypergraph, and I realized nested frames is functionally equivalent and easier to implement.
Oh,
So that'll make it. That is the latest big theoretical development on my side. I think I mentioned it, but the idea that if you have a hyperlink, an array link, forget the recursivity part, and then you say, oh, this frame happens to implicitly contain this subframe and this subframe and this subframe and this subframe. And it's also part of that frame and part of that bigger frame. Like, so there's this kind of hierarchy of nesting. And you just say, whenever you have a frame, you say, these are the frames it contains and the frames it's contained in. So you have these up and down links to any frame. If I want to speak about a link, well, a link will probably be a subframe. It can be instantiated as a subframe. If I say, John, let me give my usual example, right? John gives a ball to Mary. Well, in that implicitly, it means that Mary and John know one another. It means that the ball used to belong to John. The ball now belongs to Mary. There's all these triples which are simple links. that are implicit in the frame. So let's make these implicit triple into explicit subframes, elementary ones in this case, because triples are elementary. And then you have, that means you've named them, that means you've given them an identity. Maybe you had to reify them, which is a bit wordy and not the most efficient, but it does, if you say this one is explicitly part of that one, it makes the being able to point to the link, oh, this link here, very possible. So that's where I'm at now. Simpler to implement.
Right. Is there, and I think I've asked this before, a resource that talks about the concept of nested frames? Because that's not very.
Oh, it's something I came up with recently, so I don't know.
So, but okay, but frames themselves in this
The
context.
frames are well documented.
So remind me again of a good resource for the discussions on that concept? Because I mean, you Google frames, right, and everything comes up,
And you get everything comes up, absolutely.
including
Because
HTML iframes and stuff. So
yes,
yeah, if you
good
have
point.
another good resource, I need to review it a couple times
No,
before.
no, absolutely legit. Did I
I
did I
bet you shared something already.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not. If we did a presentation at Future of Text with Frode Hedgeland, and we used those slides. So let me give you the link to the slides. And
Okay.
there's a slide in there where I basically give a list. Oh, frames. Let me actually share screen. It's easier. Tuck, tuck, um, screen, participant screen, share. Desktop 2, yes. So the slide you want is basically this one, slide 7. And basically, if you look at nested frames, did you see this? Did I show this to you
Yep.
before? Okay,
Oh,
good.
whoa. I know I'm seeing it now, but yeah, it seems familiar. I think well, I don't remember this slide though.
Okay, so it's new. Okay, fair. So this is about describing nested frames as unit of knowledge. And basically, I'm saying if you look at what frames are, there's been linguistic action frames from Charles Fillmore, knowledge representation by Minsky. Minsky was big on frames, metaphorical frames by Lakoff and Johnson, and now, and at another layer, the political frames by Lakoff, argumentation schemes by Walton. I keep quoting. Jack pointed me to personal constructs by George Kelly. There's dramaturgic frames by Irving Goffman. And if you think about it, all the pattern language literature is about frames up to a point. Patterns are frames at a deep level. Uh,
So,
but the nesting I think is really interesting because when you speak about knowledge representation, often you'll have action frames as subframes of that, or argumentation is speaking about these knowledge representation frames as precedent and subsequent, like the claims are knowledge representation, like Minsky-ish or Lakoff-ish. Those are more kind of higher state. But what I'm saying is there are cases where you can have the action frame as part of an argumentation scheme and so on.
so
And if, yep.
when I'm thinking of frames and if I'm creating a JavaScript data structure to contain my frames,
It's going to be a dictionary.
right?
A
So it's just a
simple
pointer
object.
that says these pointers contain, it's a pointer to an array of pointers, right?
It's a key value. It's a key value thing, except you have to be a bit careful because multiplicity can be a bit weird, right?
Well, what's the value thing? Is it an object or is it another set of pointers? Because you're talking about having frames or either.
Yeah, the value will be for some keys, the value will be a literal or a set of literals, and for other keys, it will be another frame or set of frames.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's what I just want to get an idea of how foreign of a
Yeah, it's
data
not
structure
there.
this is. That I assume it sounded like it was going to be pretty simple, but you
It
know.
is pretty simple.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a difficult translation um from where I'm at.
No,
Kind
the
of-
slightly more subtle thing is you're pointing to another frame, and that frame is immutable, but you have to check, oh, did this frame get replaced by a fork, or did it get replaced by distinction? That
And
is
from a
the
data standpoint, you might make it like a double linked list to where objects might point at the, have a reference to the things that are pointing at it just for
yeah,
speed, but that's not
yeah, that's an implementation, but yes, absolutely.
okay. Yeah.
But you
Awesome. So yeah, I'm
what you'll see
actually
it as is this frame is embedded in these structures, including the frame history structure.
because
Right.
I have actually written the code to where when I'm doing the reason score math, it doesn't assume anything about where its parents or children are coming from. So you
Good.
just pass them in. So however the data is stored, it should be pretty easy to uh, reify the scores. And I'm going to abstract it out to where my TypeScript is just these are the fields that I'm reading out of any object. And so you have
Yeah.
to fit that. But if I'm not using the field, so I'm going to detach it from my current code. I think it mostly is, but then I got lazy and added things to that object instead of the other one.
No, the layering is tricky. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. It'll be fascinating and fun to
Meanwhile, I am looking for contracts if you hear about them.
for some work or
Some paid work would be nice.
yeah, you're probably out of my budget for this
Yeah,
project.
fair, fair. But if you hear of somebody who needs somebody who has very good Python and Postgres,
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll keep it in mind.
okay,
All right, we'll shut down and I'll post this in the
okay,
CDL at some point in the future.
okay, excellent.
Bye,
Ciao,
everybody.
ciao. Bye bye.